Do you enjoy our YouTube content? Do you wish there was more? Well, now there is. Patreon.com/Powercast Network. There you will find, just starting at $5 a month, more access to podcasts, to shows, to other saves. Check it out today, everybody. That's patreon.com/Powercast Network. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of Spotlight with Brad Drake. I, of course, am Brad Drake, your host, and today we are going to discuss the February 7th, 1989 title win by Larry Zbyszko, where he defeated 19 others to capture the AWA Heavyweight Championship of the world. Now, he cut a magnificent promo after this title win, after he did a interview with Bill Apter. Of course, Bill Apter was involved with Pro Wrestling Illustrated and had himself all over most wrestling promotions in those days. Of course, the WWF was excluded. They kind of ignored the Apter magazines because they had their own magazines going. But besides that, Apter had himself all over Jim Crockett Promotions, had himself all over Continental in Memphis, and had himself involved in all over the AWA also. It was free publicity for these companies, and they took advantage of it. So, what led to this battle royal over this vacant title? It's a good question, and this is an interesting part in AWA history. The AWA was in serious financial trouble by, well, really probably 1987. 88 was when things started getting pretty bad, and by 1989, things were pretty bleak. What was going on was that the WWF was raiding all of the AWA's talent. They were stealing all their wrestlers, and it was making it very difficult for the AWA to draw crowds and to get people watching their television shows. The problem, and not a lot of people understand this, the biggest problem with what Vince McMahon did was not only did he steal the wrestlers from these promotions, but he was also stealing their television time slots in cities across the country. So, for example, the AWA, and I'm just doing a hypothetical here, the AWA would have a handshake deal in Omaha, Nebraska with WXYZ television station, right? And they'd been in business together for 20 years. They did a bartered time deal, so the AWA didn't pay anything, but WXYZ was making money off of the advertising. Yada, 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 okay? So they had this handshake deal in place, and then, every month or so, or every 2 weeks, the AWA would send them a tape, and that is what they would play for that week's upcoming television in their time slot. This is how syndicated television worked. So in the case of the WWF, what they would do is they would go into these towns, for example, WXYZ in Omaha, and Vince McMahon would walk in or send somebody in with a briefcase full of money, and they would say, hey, we want the IWA's time slot here on WXYZ. And WXYZ would say, sure. So, therefore, the AWA would lose their time slot with WXYZ, and now they're losing a region of their syndicated television network. So this was one of the biggest blows that the WWF did to the AWA and to other companies. Now, they also did the shady thing where the AWA would book ahead for a year all their venues, and for example, and this is just a hypothetical, they would walk in and into the St. Paul Civic Center and say, hey, we want to run Christmas Day, 1987. St. Paul Civic Center's building manager would say, sure, we'll put you on the schedule, no problem. The WWF would walk in there a couple months later and say, hey, we want Christmas Day of the St. Paul Civic Center for 1987. Here's $10,000 up front, and we're going to give you another $30,000 for the next 3 Christmases, December 25th, for 88, 89, and 90 also. and St. Paul Civic Center, and again, this is hypothetical. This didn't actually happen with the St. Paul Civic Center, but it happened with many other buildings. They would say, that sounds great to us. The AWA's out. You are now in. And now the AWA would lose their building. Okay? So this is why the AWA was in trouble. It was these three factors. The WWF was taking their talent. The WWF was taking their television stations without breaking up their syndicated network. And the WWF was taking their venues away from them. This is why the AWA was in financial trouble. So what was going on was that Verne Gagne was borrowing and getting lines of credit to keep the AWA afloat based off of properties that he owned. And he owned a property outside of Lake Minnetonka, Minnesota. That was, I don't know how many millions of dollars this property was, this beautiful property. He had a horse farm and all this. This was his home. This was where he eventually was planning to retire and live full time. He was borrowing against this home for a line of credit to keep the AWA above water. At the same time, the state of Minnesota was attempting to take this property from him in eminent domain, and of course offering him pennies on the dollar to take over the property. So he was also fighting the state of Minnesota in a legal battle to try to retain his property. So Verne Gagne is essentially being, run dry here on two different fronts. And the guy was such a competitor that he was trying to keep things going and keep things alive and to keep his promotion afloat. And unfortunately, in the end, it just didn't work out, and the AWA closed the doors for the final time in 1991. So here we are in February of 1989. The title has been vacant since January 20th, 1999, when Jerry the King Lawler was stripped of the title. After Super Clash on December 13th, Verne Gagne has a falling out with Jerry Jarrett and Jerry Lawler, 50% owners in the Continental Wrestling Association. The fallout, the claim by Lawler and Jarrett was that Verne was responsible for paying the CWA talent on Super Clash, whereas Verne Gagne contends that no, the CWA was responsible for paying their own talent on Super Clash. So the attempt of Super Clash was to merge the AWA World Heavyweight title with the World Class Wrestling Association World Heavyweight title. The AWA and CWA titles had already been merged. So this was an attempt to merge all three titles and to create a unified World Heavyweight champion. This is exactly what happened, and Jerry Lawler was the unified World Heavyweight champion. Well, of course, Lawler and Jarrett are chapped about what took place at Super Clash, and their deal is over. So the AWA strips Lawler of their version, their part of the unified World Heavyweight title, and takes back the AWA World Heavyweight Championship. Okay, so the man that wins this battle royal, a man that Verne Gagne feels he can trust, is Larry Zbyszko. Not to mention, Larry Zbyszko is a very good in-ring talent, and he is very, very good on the microphone. So tensions are high here in the AWA at this point, okay? And Larry Zbyszko had not been back very long with the AWA at this point. He had just returned in 1989, January of 1989, to the AWA. He had been with Jim Crockett Promotions and some other NWA territories from 1987 until the end of 1988. Some of you may remember he held that Western States Heritage title, and so he leaves Crockett. That title ends up becoming vacant, and then they just get rid of it, and he returns back to the AWA, where Verne Gagne makes him the AWA Heavyweight Champion of the world. And it's actually a pretty cool match if you watch that Battle Royal. Of course, it's typical AWA where there's a shady ending because they're trying to build a feud with Larry Zbyszko and Tom Zenk, but it's still entertaining to watch. And what I find most interesting about this was Zbyszko had already been with the AWA from 1984 to 1987. He had a good feud with Sergeant Slaughter where he actually captured the AWA America's Heavyweight title and then ended up losing the title back to Sergeant Slaughter, and eventually he left the AWA in 1987 to go work for Crockett. So he is back fresh with the AWA here in 1989, and he's bitter. You can tell that Larry Zbyszko is not happy with the way he was treated in Crockett. And you could also tell that he still holds some resentment from his time with the WWF, which was also called the WWWF under Vince McMahon Sr. in the 1970s when Larry Zbyszko was there as the protege and then sworn enemy of Bruno Sammartino. So this is just a little backstory for you, everybody, so you can understand this heated, riveting promo by Larry Zbyszko. And I got to tell you, everybody, I've been watching pro wrestling for 35 years, and I recently heard this promo. This is one of the best promos I've ever heard. So I hope you enjoy, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed this edition of Spotlight with Brad Drake.
Hello, everyone. This is Bill Apter from Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine. Just got done the battle royal to determine a new AWA champion. I just photographed the match. Larry Zbyszko beating out Tom Zenk at the end. The champ's working his way toward our interview area. Larry Zbyszko, congratulations.
Got back in the ring. Boy.
Larry, 14 years you've been after a world title. You finally realized your dream. AWA heavyweight champion. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you. I knew this 14 glorious years ago. You know, when I first met Bruno Sammartino, the very first day we trained together, I knew I was as great or greater than that man. Okay, you know what my secret is? I am a product of all the best professional wrestlers that ever were and that ever will be. I was trained by Bruno, by Strongbow. I could name names of people that you don't even know. They're the ones that made me a champion.
What about the people now that are going to try?
Well, let me tell you something. I'm not done with my story yet. You know it, and I want it written. You know, I've overcome since I began as a Rookie of the Year. And the man that I trusted the most in my career stabbed me in the back. Yeah, and you know what happened ever since then? Ever since I retired Sammartino, people have been running from me from one promotional group to another federation to another association. But the cream just can't help but rise to the top. I could not help become the heavyweight champion of the world because it was my destiny. I had no choice. Okay?
Wait a second. Hold on. Tom Zenk is out there, wants to know if he's going to get a rematch, get a shot against you because he was the last man in with you.
Well, I mentioned some other champions that have ran for me. Ric Flair just spent a whole year running from me. Okay? I'm not a kind of champion like I wasn't a man all the rest of my life that's going to run from somebody. You know, I fly planes through thunderstorms, my own. I look death in the face and I spit in its eye. I'm like a generation that you don't find anymore. Nowadays, you wimpy society of robotized sheep, all you care about is how white your teeth are, what color your hair is. But you don't know what the hard way is anymore. You don't become a world champion by looking good, by putting makeup on your face, or sticking your tongue out during an interview. You become the champion because you're the best wrestler in the entire world. Now, all the federations can make all the claims they want from this day forward, but the reality of the matter is there's no other champion that can beat me. If you can, my challenge open. Flair, the other one, anytime, any place. If you don't meet me, you're the coward. But to all the federations, you can save all the hype. Because Larry Zbyszko, I, after 14 glorious years, am the major league of professional wrestling.
Did you know that you could advertise on this channel? Well, you can. Call 815-290-9087 and talk to me today about advertising on our channel. We get over 3,500 hits. We also have a thriving website. We can come up with all sorts of packages for you and make things happen together. Again, that's 815-290-9087 or visit braddrake.net.